If you ask someone today how they feel about the Tales franchise, they may speak of stagnant anime tropes, or increasingly esoteric titles. What they may not have considered is how important the series is to the development of Japanese role-playing games. It's not only responsible for further popularizing the action RPG subgenre, but the creation of two beloved studios that are still making games to this day. This is the story of the Tales franchise, and the developer that brought it to life. To understand the history of Tales, we have to look back to its original developers, Wolf Team. The studio was founded in 1986 as a group within software company Telenet Japan, where their first contribution was to Valis, the Phantasm Soldier, a side-scrolling action game for Japanese personal computers. A year later, Valis programmer Masahiro Akishino broke off from Telenet and established Wolf Team as an independent developer. It was during this time of independence that Wolf Team started making RPGs and strategy games, like Arcus and Zan, Kagero no Toki. In 1990, Akishino went back to Telenet and made Wolf Team an official subsidiary of the developer. During this time, they continued to make new entries in the Arcus and Zan franchises, as well as original IPs such as El Viento and Earnest Evans for the Mega Drive. Starting in 1993, the first of many shakeups that would hit Wolf Team throughout its existence came to pass, when Telenet absorbed the studio back into itself. Akishino, who founded the studio and was still its head, protested this move and eventually quit, taking a chunk of the staff with him. He would go on to form a new studio, J-Force, but it would only make 5 games before shutting down in 1996, after he went missing.
この世に悪があるとすれば、それは人の心だ。
Back at Wolf Team, director Joe Asanuma, designer Masaki Norimoto, and programmer/writer Yoshiharu Gotanda were starting development on Tale Phantasia, an action RPG for the Super Famicom. Telenet and Wolf Team began shopping the project looking for a partner to help fund it, and after an unsuccessful pitch with Enix, Namco stepped in as the game's publisher. From what we know, development wasn't easy, as Namco's input was making Asanuma, Norimoto, and Gotanda resentful of their new partner. What happened next is what would tear Wolf Team apart. Eiji Kikuchi, a graphic designer and director at Telenet's soon-to-be-defunct Riot subsidiary, was transferred to Wolf Team. As part of this move, he was made director on the Phantasia project, with longtime Wolf Team director Joe Asanuma being pushed out of his usual role. Namco also pushed for other changes that didn't sit well with members of the Tale Phantasia team. In what seems like a petty disagreement, the name was changed from Tale Phantasia to Tales of Phantasia. Character names were also completely changed from Gotanda's original concept. Masakine the Sword Fighter became Cress Albane, Bowman the Bowshooter became Chester Burklight, Merlin the Magician to Arche Clane, and Temple the Clergy to Mint Adenade. The character designs also received an overhaul, courtesy of Kosuke Fujishima, a mangaka famous at the time for Oh My Goddess. His designs brought a more professional anime aesthetic to the characters compared to the original. What came next wasn't so much the fault of Namco, but rather the size limitation of Super Famicom carts, despite the game using what was at the time a massive 48 megabit cart. The original story, written by Yoshiharu Gotanda, would have spanned 3 separate perspectives over 3 distinct time periods, but was dramatically reduced in scope. Originally, the plot would first follow a woman named Winona, who meets Douse, a man from the planet Daris Karlon, who comes bearing a warning for the people of Asalia about the dangers of Magi technology after it destroyed his own world. Daus's warning falls on deaf ears, however, as the king brands him a villain. He takes on his new mantle and begins a plan to wipe out all those who would continue research into Magi technology. Despite knowing full well that Daus only had noble intentions and that this role was thrust upon him, Winona assembles a team of heroes to defeat Daus and seal him away. The second act of Tale Phantasia would follow a woman named Rhea, whose parents, both of whom were Magi technology researchers, were killed in the ensuing war with Daus. Unlike Winona, Rhea's only impression of Daus was that he was an evil invader from another planet. From there, the second act follows her personal quest for vengeance. Finally, the third act would be what makes up most of the final game. Set 10 years after Daus was originally sealed away by Winona and 3 other heroes, Cress Albane and Chester Berklight live peaceful lives in the small village of Toltus. While they're out on a hunt, their town is destroyed by Mars Uldol, who kills everybody for a pendant that Cress's father gave to him. Cress and Chester vow vengeance and agree to track down Mars, but are betrayed by Cress's uncle, who takes his pendant and throws him in jail. In the dungeons, Cress meets Mint, a young woman whose mother was killed by Mars. They both escape and seek out Morrison, one of the original 4 heroes who helped seal away Daus. After learning of Mars's plot, Morrison rushes to Daus's tomb to stop it, but it's too late, as Daus is revived. In a last-ditch effort to save the world, Morrison sends Cress and Mint back in time, to the height of the war with Daus, to find a way to defeat him, while he and Chester hold him off in the present. In the past, Cress and Mint join forces with Arche and Klaus, who wield the magic necessary to defeat Daus. From there, the narrative continues to follow Cress and his companions through time, in their desperate attempt to stop Daus. Despite the final narrative not setting the world on fire, Tales of Phantasia was able to set itself apart from other JRPGs at the time, even among its action RPG peers. While other action RPGs at the time were merely action games with stats, like Ys or ActRaiser, Tales of Phantasia retained the random battle element of turn-based RPGs of the time. It introduced the linear motion battle system, or LIMS for short, that had players fighting on a 2D plane and actively inputting commands for attacks and special moves. For special moves, players have access to 2 short-range and 2 long-range abilities. For example, Cress's first special move is a long-range attack that can only be used when he is a certain distance from the enemy. Spells, on the other hand, affect every enemy on the screen, but have the downside of requiring a cast time. The one downside in the original release is that players can only control Cress. Other party members operate off of general AI routines assigned by the player, such as focusing on offense or healing. But players can also pause during battle to assign characters to perform certain abilities as the need arises. With all these changes and setbacks, Tales of Phantasia was delayed from its original release year of 1994 to 1995. The delay would initially hurt the game, as its sales out the gate weren't at all impressive for the time, with only 212,000 copies being sold in its debut month. Its performance is blamed on coming out during the same month as JRPG juggernaut Dragon Quest VI. Critically, the game was divisive in Japan, with Famitsu scoring the game a 30 out of 40, with one reviewer giving it a 6 out of 10, while another gave it a 9 out of 10. Despite its lukewarm reception in Japan, one of the only English reviews at the time, from GameFan magazine, had a much more positive view, with the outlet saying, "Namco has the power to make an epic RPG, and that it's the most stunning 16-bit game I've ever seen." Back in Japan, however, Wolf Team was in tatters. Asanuma, Norimoto, and Gotanda left to form their own studio after their protests over the changes made to Tale Phantasia fell on deaf ears. The new studio was to be called Tri-Ace, and would be an allusion to how important they perceived themselves. The 3 also reached out to their former colleagues at Wolf Team to join them at the newly founded studio, and many, heeded the call, leaving Wolf Team a husk of its former self. With Tri-Ace free to pursue their vision free from publisher interference, they immediately got to work on a new concept from Gotanda, who had written the original Tale Phantasia scenario. His new story had more ambition than anything he had written previously, and needed an even more ambitious setting to contain it all. With their first game, Tri-Ace was looking to the stars. As for Wolf Team, Telenet was pleased enough with Tales of Phantasia that they quickly restaffed the studio to continue the series, with Kikuchi at the helm as series director. Motoi Sakuraba remained the series composer, but he was now a freelancer, which enabled him to write music not only for Wolf Team, but for Tri-Ace as well. Wolf Team continued developing new games in the Tales franchise, with Tales of Destiny on the PlayStation in 1997. It was the first Tales game made entirely by the new Wolf Team, led by Eiji Kikuchi. It once again featured music by Motoi Sakuraba, but the character designs were not handled by Fujishima. Instead, Wolf Team went with Mutsumi Inomata, an animator and character designer whose works include anime like City Hunter, Urusei Yatsura, and Gundam Seed. The story, written by first-timer Kazuya Ishizuka, followed the adventures of Ston Ailrone. The game begins with him stowing away on an airship that's soon attacked by monsters, seeking a magical weapon called a Swordian, created during the Aether Wars, a conflict between those on the planet and the technologically advanced civilization in the sky. Ston seeks out other Swordian wielders to put a stop to those who would reignite the Aether Wars once again. For Tales of Destiny, Wolf Team upgraded limbs to the Enhanced Linear Motion Battle System, or ELIMS for short. While combat is still largely the same, the enhancement comes with players now being able to map 4 different abilities to a character, with a neutral and 4 directional inputs. The range system is also gone, allowing players to use any equipped ability at any location on the battlefield. There is a larger emphasis on combos, with some abilities being able to hit multiple times, staggering or juggling enemies. Tales of Destiny also introduced multiplayer for the first time in the series. The primary player can only play as Ston, but 3 other players can control the rest of the party during battle, with a multi-tap accessory. Tales of Destiny's most important contribution to the series came in the form of the active party window. When on the world map, there would be a tiny window in the bottom left-hand corner, featuring the party interacting with each other. They would perform unique animations and even have conversations. The feature was the precursor to the skits found in every game onward, but was unfortunately removed from the English release, due to Namco declining to add an English dub. Speaking of the English release, Tales of Destiny was announced for North America at E3 1998, with Namco telling RPG Gamer at the time that they were putting everything into its localization to compensate for its 2D, sprite-based visuals, as they would look antiquated compared to Final Fantasy VII, which was released a year prior. Despite their efforts, many outlets in the US heavily criticized the game, with many honing in on its visuals. GameSpot's Peter Bartholow gave the game a 4.9 out of 10, saying, "Looking and sounding far too much like an SNES game, Tales of Destiny seems like it was originally intended to be a sequel on the SNES that got delayed well into the PlayStation's lifecycle." IGN's Andre Vernade was much more kind, giving it a 7.5, but really sums up the attitude levied at 2D games at the time with his stinger, "It may seem somewhat elitist, but many gamers today do place a huge emphasis on the graphics of a title, and Tales of Destiny just seems, well, old." Even with its tepid critical reception, Tales of Destiny was a sales success, selling over 1 million copies worldwide. With those kinds of numbers, it was only natural that Wolf Team would start working on the next Tales game right away. Before that, though, Wolf Team made one last non-Tales game with Cybernetic Empire, a Japan-only third-person action game. The only interesting thing about this title is that it was published by Telenet, without the support of Namco. From what little gameplay is available on the internet, they were probably right to avoid associating themselves with this one. Getting back to Tales, Wolf Team released Tales of Eternia in the year 2000. It followed closely in the footsteps of its predecessor, featuring 2D graphics, character designs by Inomata, and a soundtrack by Sakuraba. The game, however, was more ambitious, shipping across 3 discs, featuring more 3D elements, multiple fully animated FMVs by Production IG, and fully voice-acted event scenes.
It's useless, I tell you.
Tales of Eternia, written by Sawako Natori, scriptwriter on the Drakengard series and the original Nier, tells the story of 2 planets, Inferia and Celestia, that are connected to each other via a device called the Orbis Barrier. On the planet of Inferia, Reed and his childhood friend Farah notice a ship crossing the Orbis Barrier from Celestia and crashing near their small farming village. Upon finding the ship, they meet a young girl named Meridi, who comes bearing a warning about the Grand Fall, a theoretical cataclysmic event that would see the Orbis Barrier fail, thus causing Inferia and Celestia to crash into each other. From there, Reed and Farah, along with Meridi and a cast of other characters, travel between both worlds to discover the truth behind the Orbis Barrier and prevent the Grand Fall. For Eternia, Wolf Team further enhanced combat with the aggressive linear motion battle system, or ALIMS for short. The big change this time comes with spells, as they no longer pause battle nor affect the entire screen. Now spells are cast in real time and only affect localized areas, allowing players to dodge them. For the first time, players can also directly control every character during battle by switching between them. Of course, players can still pause the game to issue commands to other party members, and the AI routines have been expanded to allow even greater control over their actions. All this led to Tales of Eternia, named Tales of Destiny 2 in the US to avoid a trademark dispute with Mattel's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe toy line, receiving a better reception from critics at the time. GameSpot's Brad Shoemaker bucks the outlet's previous criticisms of Tales of Destiny to say its use of 2D visuals is something to be celebrated. One of the effects on modern RPGs brought about by Final Fantasy VII is an ever-increasing focus on complex 3D graphics. Refreshingly, Tales of Destiny 2 bucks this trend. At a time when Final Fantasy X is only a few months from release, many RPG fans will quietly applaud Tales of Destiny 2's adherence to the old RPG ways. As for its English voice acting, critics were less than kind. Allgame, while giving the game a 4 out of 5, said the game's English cast sound as if they were waiting to get their oil changed instead of being on a life or death mission.
Max, are you alright?
Yeah?
While it didn't perform as well as Tales of Destiny, Tales of Eternia would go on to sell 873,000 copies worldwide. Two years later, Wolf Team would see its last release in 2002's Tales of Destiny 2 for the PlayStation 2, a true sequel to the original Tales of Destiny and causing no small amount of confusion for American Tales fans, who now have to differentiate between Tales of Destiny 2 and Tales of Destiny 2. It would be the first time since Tales of Phantasia that Namco would decline to localize a title in the series. While there's no official reason given, it's easy to speculate that Tales of Destiny 2, being a 2D game on the PS2, was seen as too much of a risk in a North American market that was demanding cutting-edge 3D graphics after Squaresoft defined the PS2 RPG experience with Final Fantasy X and Kingdom Hearts. Tales of Destiny 2, written by Natori as well, takes place 18 years after the events of the first game. It stars the son of Ston and Ruti, Kyle, who is convinced he is destined to be a hero, just like his parents. After meeting a girl named Rayla, he begins his journey to learn what it means to be a real hero. Once again, Wolf Team would evolve limbs even further with the Trust and Tactical Linear Motion Battle System, or TT limbs. The big change this time around would be the introduction of the Spirit system. During battle, every action, whether it be a normal or special, reduces the Spirit bar. Once it's empty, that character can no longer take any actions until it refills, which can be accomplished by not taking any action or guarding. There's also a dividing line between the player's party and the enemies that moves with the advancing group. If a player character finds themselves behind enemy lines, all spirit costs are increased. If this sounds familiar, the spirit system would eventually evolve into the chain capacity or CC system that North American players would first see in Tales of Grace's F. Tales of Destiny 2 is also the first game to introduce grade as a component of battle. Depending on the player's skill and technique during battle, they are awarded positive or negative grade. At the end of the game, the accumulated grade can be spent on New Game Plus modifiers. Namco had high hopes for Tales of Destiny 2. They expected to sell 600,000 copies, and the game would go on to sell almost 1 million units. After Tales of Destiny 2 released, Telenet Japan sold part of its stake in Wolf Team, giving Namco majority ownership in 2003. With this change in ownership, the team was renamed Namco Tales Studio, and its fate was forever sealed as the developer of the Tales franchise. With the death of Wolf Team and the birth of Namco Tales Studio, Eiji Kikuchi and his newly named team was going to note the occasion by returning to the setting of the game that started it all. He and his team would end up creating what is arguably the most beloved game in the series, which would forever set a bar that some fans feel has been rarely met since. Hey everyone, thank you all so much for watching. If you all actually made it this far, kudos. Quick disclaimer, I guess. There's some stuff that is missing from this, technically. We're not covering the remakes and spin-offs in the main series, essentially. Expect those in some sort of spin-off episode later in the future. I just wanted to get that out now before we got, well, actually in the comments, like, super hard. If you like what we do, feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe even if you're feeling fancy. You can also find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/redmufflerman, and we're also on Twitter. And you can follow myself at RedMufflerMan, and then Zach, the person who is writing the series, is at PhasonMasher. But I just want to say thank you for watching. We'll be making more content again soon, so feel free to stick around. Take it easy.